Hi, sweetie. How's your daddy? He's doing okay? All right, good. Hi, good morning. Nice to see you. Hi, Phil. Good morning. Hi, Barb. So at one point, Jesus said, listen to this. He said, the kingdom of heaven is like a man who had a treasure chest, and he's bringing old and new things out of that chest. So let's get a visual here this morning. Listen to it again. Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is like a man who owned a treasure chest, and he's opening it up and bringing new and old things out of that chest. We have a picture here this morning in front of our eyes and our hearts and our minds. So what we learned this morning, this teaching from the Lord in your life and mine, for some of us is an old thing. That is, it's something you've heard and been taught and dwelt on and thought about and prayed about in your life as a Christian, maybe more than once, maybe a number of times over the years. For some of you listening this morning, this will be a new thing, or at least a new take on a thing that you were familiar with or was part of your life as a child of the kingdom. But whether this is old or new for you and for me, the power of it and the place of it and the wonder of it in our lives as God's children is in no way, in no form, in no shape, in any way diminished. What he brings to us today is this kind and wondrous word that helps us when we go back out through the doors into the regular world that you and I live in ways that you'll hear this morning, I hope not just with your ears, but with your heart, in ways that are meant to build us up as we live out in the world, that are meant to equip us as we go through the world, that are meant to help us focus and have clarity in our lives and our minds as children of the kingdom as we live in the world. So listen, it's a simple question. Although the way we answer it most of the time, we tend to answer it, says that for us it's not simple at all. It is really this simple question, and yet as we answer it, not just with our words, loved ones, but with our lives, it doesn't come across in our living as simple at all. This is the question. What is most necessary for us? Now, notice I didn't say, what do we need? Listen carefully to it. What is most necessary for us? Well, you probably know from our perspective as human beings, the answer, the possibilities that we have to answer that question can be a really long list. Well, what's most necessary is to have good health. What's most necessary is to have really great marriages. What's most necessary is to have happy and well-adjusted children. What's most necessary is to have a great job to go to. What's most necessary is to have fulfillment and meaning in our lives. What's most necessary, the list that we answer from as human beings, hear me, can be a long one. And remember I said this is important. We don't just answer it with our words. We're talking about how we answer that question with our lives. In fact, where you and I as human beings, where we put our focus and energy, well, guess what? That's part of how we answer the question. So it isn't just where we gather here in God's houses as people on a Sunday morning dressed up with people of like mind around us. Oh no, this question, what is most necessary for us, is this great big banner out there in our lives. And out there with our lives, you and me, we're answering the question. We are in some ways, whether we realize it or not, with where we place our focus and our energy. And this too, listen, what we worry about the most is also the answer to the question for us. It is, in a profound way, it is our Martha-ness. This imperfection, this sinfulness that is part of every human experience, it's yours and it's mine because that's who we are in the world. Listens to the question that is asked this morning in a way that only our ears are responding to first. And so then with our lives, how we live out there, the choices we make, what we focus on, listen to it, what you and I worry about. Well, guess what? That's us answering the question. Now, we probably want to think to ourselves that nobody's keeping track. Nobody's paying attention. No one's really writing down how we're answering. But I want you to hear this morning that the answer that we're giving isn't just among us or among the people around us who are as broken as we are. The answer we're giving, loved ones, is being heard in the throne room of heaven. The God who created us and recreates us in His Son, He's noting how we're answering. And I'll say this to you again because it is so loud for us. It's our Martha-ness. Most of the time we're answering by what we focus on, where our energy is spent in the course of our lives. And what we're doing as we lay awake at night staring at the ceiling or across the kitchen table or across our desk as we're at work, what we are sitting there or lying there and worrying the most about. Those very words, that very action in your life and mine, which is an expression of our sinful Martha-ness, is our answer to the question, what is most necessary for us? The Lord, on the other hand, has a completely different perspective. For Him, the list of answers is really, really short. He tells us this morning that what is most necessary for every one of us is this: the forgiveness, peace, and life that come only through Him. Listen to it again. This is what the Lord tells each one of us and every one of us is most necessary in our lives: the forgiveness, peace, and life that come only through Him. You see, Jesus knows, and it's why He lovingly tells us, that is what settles us now. We may have all kinds of experiences and contexts in the course of our living. We do. But this is the common ground that we live on as broken human beings. It is His forgiveness and peace and life that settles our hearts and our souls, that makes us whole, that gives us a quietness in our lives that only God can give to us and that only comes through our Savior. This gift that Jesus is giving, listen to it, this necessary thing that Mary sat and listened to, that Martha struggled to hear. It is in your life and mine what also assures our future. I'll put it to you plainly. It is the forgiveness and peace and life that was earned by our Savior on His cross and in His tomb that determines and decides where you and I will spend eternity and how we will spend eternity. It is most necessary for us. Of course, He knows, loved ones. He knows better than you and I do that we have other needs too. The Lord does. But today in your life and mine, this old thing or this new thing is what He wants us to hear because it is the most important thing. Bar none. And so today, as He comes among us, this kind and gracious and loving God is providing for you and me, giving to us, His loved children, what is most necessary for us. Right here where He gathers us. Listen to it. He is sharing with us, He has already this morning, this word of forgiveness that heals our hearts and washes away our sin. That takes the blood of Calvary, the blood shed by our Savior, and pours it over our hearts and our souls and forgives every sin and any sin and all sin. This morning He's sharing it with you and me. We heard it spoken before. I pray that you heard it not just with your ears, but with your heart. He's speaking to us loved children. And the word that He speaks is peace from the Father through Him for us. The peacefulness that settles our minds and settles our hearts and settles our lives, lets us quiet before Him in light of and in spite of all the things that might be going on in our lives out there. There is this word of peace that we are okay, absolved, loved by the Father in heaven through this Son, our Savior. This word of peace. I'll ask you, have you ever left church on Sunday morning and walked back out through the doors and thought to yourself, I'm better now? Came in through the doors and you're all tied up, all worried about, whatever. Choose your whatever. All locked up and tied up and tense and tight and wound up because of all of the whatever of your life. And you came into God's presence. You came into His house. And He, in bringing you here, spoke to you and shared with you. And the presence and the power of Jesus came to you through a word and through the Holy Supper. And you walked back out the doors and went, whew, I'm better now. Well, I want you to hear. That's the peace of Jesus. This morning He's planting inside of you and me in a miraculous way the same life that came to be at the moment of His resurrection. The life that sprung from a tomb that's now empty. That is inside of us because by the power of His Spirit, He has planted it inside of us, growing toward eternity. A life, listen, a life that can never come to an end. And in doing that, listen to me, He's assuring all of us as His children that all the rest is in His hand too. All the other things that we struggle with because we see them and feel them to be needful for us. Good marriages and happy children and meaningful work and good health and all that goes with our needs. Listen, the Lord is assuring us this morning, this great God of all creation, this one who is the God of 1,000 hills, who hung every star and planted every tree and brought us to life. He's assuring us that all those needs too, they're all in His gracious hand. And He's loving us by taking care of them too. So listen to it. It's a simple question. What is most necessary for you and me? Well, my loved ones, the answer is the Mary thing. Receiving from Jesus this word of pardon and peace and life so that you and I are set in time and for eternity. It is for us the most necessary thing. On this morning in His house, this is a teaching of the Lord. If you would rise, please. And let's join now in confessing our Christian